Welcome to The Eye Opener. I'm your host, Michael Lewis. At the beginning of today's video, let's take a look upwards and towards the stars and leave this unsettling world for a short while. We all know that President Trump has a famous campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again." And he often ends his campaign speeches with this phrase. But these words are not just empty rhetoric, as the Trump administration is still actively pushing the agenda in the midst of the tension over the election. The first person from the US landed on the moon on July 20th, 1969, and by December 14th, 1972, 12 people had successfully set foot on the moon, totaling up to 6 trips. This is one of the proud achievements of the Americans, and so far only American astronauts in this whole world have landed on the moon. But since then, no such attempt has been made. When President Trump takes office, he hopes to repeat the event. On Wednesday, December 9th, the Trump administration released its new national space policy, which calls for the United States to establish leadership in space and remain the world's most important space nation. This includes a return to the moon and a permanent presence on the moon. From March 2009 to December 1st, 2020, the Chinese Communist Party has made at least 4 unmanned landing attempts to the backside of the moon and have taken samples of the moon's surface. Vice President Mike Pence has said, China recently landed an unmanned craft on the moon and for the first time robotically raised the red flag of Communist China on the magnificent desolation. Therefore, the Trump administration's space ambitions are also designed to counter the threat of the Chinese Communist Party and to set a more ambitious goal for NASA to be ready to land on Mars. At the same time, the government wants to foster an environment for innovative private commercial space ventures, the most prominent of which is Elon Musk's SpaceX. On November 16th of this year, SpaceX successfully carried out the world's first commercial crew mission, carrying 4 astronauts to the International Space Station. On December 9th, SpaceX conducted an unmanned test flight of the Starship rocket. SpaceX has high hopes that the spacecraft will be able to travel between the Earth and the Moon, transporting people and cargo, and even carrying things from Earth to Mars. The test flight was scheduled to fly to 12,500 meters, but Musk predicted before the Starship took off that there would be an error with the test flight. As he foretold, a few minutes after the Starship lifted off, the engines began to shut down and started to fall. When the rocket was close to the ground, the engines reignited and adjusted to a vertical position for landing, but it exploded when it landed. But Musk smiled, instead of worrying, saying that the reason for the failed landing was that the fuel tank pressure was too low at the time, causing the touchdown velocity to be too high. But the attempt allowed them to get all the data they needed, and he congratulated the team and tweeted, "Mars, here we come." Now, let's return to President Trump's administration's announcement of the national space policy on December 9th. Another important point of this policy is the arrangement of the U.S. new military service, Space Force. At the time, Vice President Pence announced the first 2 Space Force bases, both in Florida. One is in Cape Canaveral Space Force Station on the eastern coast of Florida. The other is Patrick Space Force Base. Pence stated that the U.S. Space Force will establish a Space Force base on the moon. It will lay the groundwork for more in-depth space exploration. And he also mentioned that the United States would land on Mars and beyond. We often see astronauts traveling between different stars in science fiction movies, and this just might come true in the near future. President Trump tweeted earlier this week that big things were going to happen in the next few days. We don't know if those things include some foreign operations. We couldn't see any hints from the U.S. officials or major media, but there was a lot of discussion on the internet on possible U.S. military action against Venezuela. Since so many people are interested, let's talk about it. Venezuela used to be a prosperous oil-producing country and its people were quite well off. But in the last 20 years, after the socialist government took control, the country declined rapidly and has now become one of the world's most poorest nations. In 2018, Venezuela held a general election. The leader of the socialist government, Nicolas Maduro, was re-elected again to nobody's surprise. After this year's US election, we probably understand how he won. Venezuelans understood at that time, so they were very angry with Maduro for using unscrupulous means to get re-elected. But then a national hero was born. The federal deputy of Venezuela's National Assembly, Juan Guaido, he was sworn in as Venezuela's acting president on January 10, 2019. Although he was recognized by more than 50 countries, including the United States, Canada, Argentina, Brazil, and most European countries, he never really gained power in Venezuela. In January of this year, the Venezuelan National Assembly re-elected an anti-Guaido figure as the leader. We all know how that was achieved. Guaido refused to accept it, however. The guards at the National Assembly no longer let him into the building. So with the support of the United States and many Venezuelan citizens, he initiated his own National Assembly in the building of the newspaper La Nación next to the Parliament building. But the crisis is still ongoing. On December 6th, this past Sunday, Maduro's government called for another election. Early this year, it was an election for the head of the assembly only. This time, it is a parliamentary election that would decide the makeup of the National Assembly. On Monday, December 7th, Maduro's political alliances claimed a landslide victory, which solidified Maduro's position in the National Assembly and made the possibility of Guaido's return to the parliamentary building even slimmer. As you might remember, Venezuela is the home of the highly controversial voting software Smartmatic, and Maduro's win was not at all honorable. As everyone, including the US, knows, President Trump's administration has repeatedly stressed that it does not recognize the results of the Venezuelan National Assembly election. But this time, will the United States take a further step? That's why speculation about whether the US will send troops to Venezuela has been circulating on the internet recently. We can only say that from the information that has come out so far, this possibility cannot be ruled out. Recently, there has been several news events that have contributed to this speculation. Firstly, as we mentioned earlier, via the election of the Venezuela's National Assembly, the country's socialist ruler, the pro-communist, pro-Russian, and anti-American Maduro has expanded his power. Secondly, the head of the White House National Security Council and National Security Advisor O'Brien seemed to give Maduro's regime a 5 to 6 day window after the National Assembly election, a deadline that some interpreted as a request for Maduro to hand over power. But here's what O'Brien said in public statement on Twitter, amounting to 2 Twitter threads in total. The first was on December 5th. Before the re-election of the National Assembly, O'Brien said, "Free and fair elections are the basis of democracy. The illegitimate Maduro regime continues to subvert democracy by holding fraudulent parliament elections. This election only serves to keep Maduro in power and does nothing to build a better future for the people of Venezuela. The U.S. will continue its unwavering demands for freedom, basic human rights, the rule of law, and truly fair elections in Venezuela. We look forward to the day when a free and prosperous Venezuela is a cornerstone of the Western Hemisphere." Another tweet came on December 6th, the day of Venezuela's National Assembly elections, where he said, "From December 7th to December 12th, we encourage Venezuelans inside and outside of Venezuela to reject the regime's fraudulent legislative elections and help restore democracy via the Consulta Popular." The Consulta Popular, led by interim President Juan Guaido, is giving the Venezuelan people a voice. The U.S. will continue to support the legitimate political activity in Venezuela. We don't know why the White House gave the dates of December 7th to 12th and what would happen after that. The tweets didn't say. Thirdly, on December 7th, soon after 2 p.m., the prestigious 82nd Airborne Division posted on Facebook predicting a Devil Storm operation this week, a time that largely overlaps the window given to Maduro's regime by the National Security Council. While the operation looks more like a drill for prospective military personnel, some netizens have linked the 82nd Airborne's operation to perhaps either maintaining social order or a sensitive time with the U.S., or sending military personnel overseas, such as Venezuela, on a special mission. Fourthly, on December 2nd, Forbes magazine cited the Wall Street Journal, who obtained news from U.S. military officials saying that Iran supports the Maduro regime in Venezuela and is currently sending weapons and troops to the Maduro government. This suggests that Iran and Venezuela, both U.S. opponents, are forming a closer military relationship. U.S. Southern Command Admiral Craig Fowler said members of the Iran's jihadist army, which the U.S. has labeled a terrorist group, have recently been working to keep Maduro in power, and he said he and his military members are real concerned about what Iran is up to, not just globally, but here in this hemisphere. Additionally, Cuba is also helping Maduro's regime with intelligence services, and the CCP and Russian militaries have had communication with Maduro as well. Venezuela is located in the backyard of the United States, As you may recall, not long ago, when Iran's action caused concern in the US military, a top Iranian nuclear weapons expert was assassinated, according to Iranian media reports, within 3 minutes by a satellite-controlled weapon on November 27th. Iran blamed Israel, a US ally, for the assassination and vowed to retaliate. Coupled with the assassination of their second most powerful figure, Qasem Soleimani, by a US military drone strike earlier in January this year, the Iran regime may have been holding grudges all this long. So what does the recent military interactions between Iran and Venezuela mean for the US? Some viewers were wondering whether the United States will send troops to Venezuela. The above explanations were the main reasons I could find. However, we still have to say this issue has not been reported by the US government and the media. Since we talked about the military relocation of US opponents, let's discuss another relevant case that is directly related to the Chinese Communist Party. On December 9th, Canadian media outlet Rebel Media claimed to have obtained a 34-page secret document confirming the Chinese Communist troops are training to fight in cold weather in several Canadian military colleges and bases. According to the document, the US government opposes this arrangement, but Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau insists that only President Trump's administration opposes this and was not a concern to the other members of the Five Eyes Alliance. However, the details revealed in the document are very concerning. The Chinese Communist soldiers who are trained in Toronto, Kingston, and other locations including 1- and 2-star generals and an entire contingent. Another important piece of information revealed by documents is that Prime Minister Trudeau has sent Canadian military personnel to China to learn propaganda tactics of the Chinese Communist Party. The military interaction between Canada and China has continued even after 2 Canadians have been taken hostage by the CCP. This secret document is not available to the public and can be found on the website thechinafiles.com. While some of the military actions of America's neighbors have attracted attention, some of the subversive events in the US have been more significant. The term color revolution in recent years usually has a positive connotation and is often associated with overthrowing a tyrannical regime. It is relatively more peaceful than the armed kind of revolutions, but it still cannot be said to be completely peaceful. I think even the author of House of Cards is unable to write what the political situation after this year's election will be. And this script is still a work in process, attracting the attention of the entire world. In the end, no one knows how deep a person's ties are or how real or fake a situation is. Currently, following Texas's lawsuit in the Supreme Court on the election results, the number of states supporting Texas' appeal has been increasing, and as of December 10th, 22 states are willing to join Texas' lawsuit once the Supreme Court agrees to take it up. 19 states, led by Missouri, filed an amicus brief with the Supreme Court in support of Texas' lawsuit. This affirms Texas' effort to litigate election disputes in 4 states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. President Trump has also filed a motion to intervene with the Supreme Court, announcing that he will also join the Texas lawsuit. As more than 20 states and territories have opposed the Texas lawsuit, the prevailing analysis suggests that the lawsuit has a larger chance of being accepted by the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, lawyers who are President Trump's supporters had an election dispute in Arizona rejected by the state's Supreme Court. The lawyers said they would file an emergency petition no later than December 10th, which could also send the case to the U.S. Supreme Court. This means that in addition to the Texas lawsuit going to the Supreme Court, the Arizona lawsuit is also likely to begin battling at the Supreme Court. At the same time, the FBI and leftist media, which had previously been silent on the election controversies and many scandals involving Biden's son, unexpectedly became active. On December 9th, the U.S. media True Pundit reported that top FBI officials revealed that they are conducting a criminal investigation into election disputes. And more importantly, the FBI claims to have found a staggering 500,000 fraudulent votes cast for Biden in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia, the exact 4 states in which Texas is prosecuting. In these key states, the difference in votes between Trump and Biden is very small, and the discovery of these 500,000 fraudulent votes is very significant. The FBI has not responded to media's inquiries before we made this video. It is not clear what the progress of this investigation is. On the same day, December 9th, Biden's son Hunter Biden issued a statement that he was under investigation by the FBI for tax purposes, and that the FBI had informed him on December 8th that this had just happened. According to Fox News, citing a U.S. Treasury Department official, the investigation was focused on whether there is something out of the ordinary about a particular transaction that had taken place with regards to Hunter Biden's business dealings with the Chinese Communist Party or other countries. This is one of the more central issues in the October Biden scandal, Hunter Biden's business dealings with the Chinese Communist Party in other countries. Of course, Biden Jr.'s erotic scandals also spread across the internet in October. The story was also reported by the leftist media such as the New York Times and CNN, who didn't follow the incident when it was exposed back in October. What message is being sent by the FBI's sudden investigation, along with the leftist media's attention on the Biden Jr. scandal? First of all, the media may be aware that the tide is shifting. Secondly, perhaps it's the recent exposure of CNN's misinformation strategies by investigation journalist James O'Keefe. CNN's internal recordings show that its senior management explicitly asked editors not to follow up on Biden's scandal in the past. Perhaps CNN and other leftist medias are trying to save their almost ruined reputation. Thirdly, they may also be posing, dilly-dallying, and superficially giving the public an explanation, but in the end, whether they can really report on the core of the story remains to be seen. In addition to Biden Jr. being investigated, his uncle, James Biden, Biden's older brother, is also under investigation. James Biden is also one of the players involved in the scandal of Hunter Biden's foreign businesses. However, there is no word yet that Joe Biden is a subject of the investigation. The Chinese Communist Party has a long history of infiltrating the United States on all fronts. In recent days, we have been following the news that a Chinese female spy, Fang Fang, has long been closely associated with Representative Eric Swalwell, who is a member of the U.S. House of Representatives Special Intelligence Committee. She has also participated in activities such as soliciting political contributions for Swalwell and has interned in Swalwell's office. The female spy has also had improper relationships with at least 2 other mayors of Midwestern cities. The latest news is that Representative Swalwell has been removed from the Special Intelligence Committee, and House Minority Leader McCarthy believes that Swalwell should be removed from Congress. The public wonders how Pelosi, as Speaker of the House of Representatives, allowed such a person to enter the Congressional Intelligence Agency. But on the issue of Swalwell's relationship with interns who were female Chinese spies, Pelosi argued that it was not necessary to conduct background checks on every intern. It really is absurd. How could they be so careless when the organization is responsible for the safety and security of the country? But Brian Dean Wright, a former U.S. intelligence officer who served in the CIA, tweeted that more deplorable aspects of the Swalwell scandal: 1. He and the woman dated. 2. She bundled political cash for him. 3. She seated staff into Capitol Hill. And 4. He serves on the Intel Committee. Oh, and 5. Pelosi knew about the whole damn thing. According to an online screenshot of Democratic Party's website, Fang Fang's name appears on Democratic Party's payroll for 2016. If she left the U.S., Fang Fang should have been out of the country in 2016. The dark secrets are being uncovered bit by bit. In addition to Chinese communist spies, President Trump's administration is also purging individuals who have been working for the Chinese Communist Party in key departments within the United States. For example, the Department of Defense removed Kissinger and 11 others from the Defense Policy Board. A new official press release shows that the department plans to invite a well-known China policy expert from the Hudson Institute, Michael Pillsbury, to chair the Defense Policy Board. He has published a book entitled The 100-Year Marathon: China's Secret Strategy to Replace America as the Global Superpower, which exposes the Chinese Communist Party's ambition to dominate the world and is considered a hawk on the Chinese Communist Party. Well, that's it for today, my friends. Make sure to like and share, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.